Hi everyone, my name is Gina Filbert Ortega for Genealogy Bank. What do you think of when you think of your family during the 1930s? Most of us associate the 1930s with one historical event, the Great Depression. And for many of our families, this decade was an especially difficult one. But not for everyone. In some cases, those living in poverty, the 1930s felt like the status quo. But for other families, they may have experienced catastrophic job loss or financial loss that created a heavy burden for them. So, how do we tell the story of the 1930s with our family history so that our family today can understand what that was like? Well, we can go to the newspapers and not just search it in the same old way, but search it so that we are looking at the story of our ancestors' life in the community that they lived with. That means looking at the paper page by page and not searching by just a name, but instead looking at things like job losses and what things cost at the store and what was going on with the stock market or what was going on with real estate. We can do that by going page by page in the local newspapers. So it's a matter of looking at the newspaper in a different way. So let's take a look at a newspaper on Genealogy Bank and think about how we can tell the story of our ancestors in the 1930s. Now, on the Genealogy Bank website, you can search in any number of ways. You already know that you can search by a name. You can also search by a keyword. But what about identifying your ancestors' local newspapers and then reading the paper page by page? Reading your ancestors' community newspaper and not just searching for that one article that mentions your ancestor can provide you with a better sense of what their time and location was like, as well as provide you with information to add as you reconstruct their story. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example. And I'm going to use a newspaper from Riverside, California for 1934. You can see it's from May of 1934. Now, to get a sense of what life was like in the 1930s, I can take a look at various articles and advertisements throughout this one issue. I can start with the front page and see what the national news of the day was, and this can help me better understand my ancestors' overall world. One aspect of the newspaper that might let me understand my ancestors' finances are ads for local grocery stores and other retailers. So let's go to a page where they have those sorts of ads. We're going to go to page 6. And you can see there's not only just meat ads, there's gasoline ads. And here is a local grocery store ads with all kinds of different foods, milk and sugar and vegetables and even some meats. Now, in this case, this newspaper has about 3 pages worth of these grocery store ads. You know, this is a newspaper for a larger city area. Your ancestors' local newspaper may not have as many advertisements. Now, I can take these prices and use an online tool to convert the price to the equivalent of the modern day cost. And that's going to help me better understand what it costs to feed my ancestors' family. And I can use that in my genealogy to explain this and their story. Now, the newspaper can also help me understand individual occupations and how they fared during this time period. So as I continue to go page by page in this newspaper, I come upon page 11. And on page 11, you can see here there is this photo of Chicago teachers protesting their pay. And obviously, this isn't for the local area, this is national news, but it gives you a sense of what was going on occupational wise during this time period and how was our ancestors who worked in these various occupations, how were they faring during the Great Depression. Now, we also want to make sure that we go through every page of the newspaper, including the back pages. So let's take a look at some of those pages here in this newspaper. Now, as I get towards those back pages, this one in particular, this is page 12, this talks about the stock market and the financial news of the day. Now, this area in California was known for their citrus crops. And so as you can see, there's an article here. Let me make this a little bit bigger about the citrus markets. And it tells you all about the price for the citrus. This would have been important if my ancestor was in, maybe they were farming, maybe they were a citrus grower. Maybe they worked in the citrus industry. But you can see there's also different things about stocks and produce and other financial news. So that's another indication of what was going on in this place during that time. Now, lastly, I want to go to the next page. And on page 13, that's where I start to see things like legal notices. And after that, I start to see help wanted notices. So here's an example. And you can see I even have for rent notices, real estate notices. That might tell me what, prices were for real estate and how much my ancestor would have expected to pay. But also pay attention to these legal notices. These give you everything from probates to lawsuits to all kinds of things. And this can be extremely helpful to your genealogy, especially in a case where maybe you haven't found a will. The probate notice here tells you it existed at one time, and you can go ahead and take a look at that. But overall, as we go through page by page of our newspaper, we get a sense of what was life like in the 1930s. Now, you can do a number of things with this. You can just use it as information to give your descendants and your family a sense of what life was like. You can take the records you find and you can add to them. So for example, you can, with these legal notices, go and look for court records. So there's a few different things you can do, but I highly recommend going through the newspaper page by page so you get a good sense of that community your ancestor was from. Now, just one final thing before I close. I want to show you two ways that you can go page by page in the newspaper, and you might have already noticed me doing this. First, here is this tool at the bottom where I can page through. I can click on this arrow or the back arrow. I can even put a number. This tells me there's 18 pages, so I can then put a number to go directly to whatever page that I want. Now, the other thing I can do is I can go up here to pages, click on it, and there's a drop down menu, and then I can select whatever page I'm interested in and go to that page. So there's two ways for you to do this. And maybe you've noticed that here at the very bottom is the source citation for this newspaper that I can now copy and paste and use in my story or my narrative or my family history. What was your family's life like during the 1930s? You might already know some of that answer based on genealogically relevant records like the 1930 U.S. Census, which is available on GenealogyBank. But adding the newspaper helps you to tell that story in a different way that just records with a name, date, and place can't do. It allows you to help your family understand what life was like during that time period and in that place. That's a story that even the non-genealogists in your family can appreciate. Good luck with your research, and I'll see you next time.